The British royal family is facing an unprecedented crisis that nobody saw coming. Prince George's longtime nanny has been abruptly dismissed, and what followed has sent shockwaves through Buckingham Palace. The woman who quietly dedicated nearly a decade of her life to raising the future king has broken her silence in ways that are leaving the royal establishment scrambling for damage control. Maria Teresa Turrión Barallo wasn't supposed to become a household name. For 9 years, she existed in the shadows of royal life, following the golden rule of palace staff: be invisible, be loyal, and never tell tales. Trained at the elite Norland College, where nannies learn everything from advanced driving techniques to self-defense, Maria was the epitome of professional discretion. She was handpicked by Prince William and Catherine not just for her qualifications, but for her ability to blend into the background while providing exceptional care. The relationship between Maria and Prince George transcended typical employer-employee boundaries. She wasn't just his caregiver. She became his emotional anchor in a world where every moment is scrutinized and every action has consequences. From his earliest days, Maria understood that George wasn't just any child. He was a future king learning to navigate a life that would never be ordinary. Maria's approach to childcare was methodical, yet warm. She created routines that gave George stability in an otherwise chaotic royal schedule. Every morning began the same way, with breakfast served at precisely the same time, books arranged in the order George preferred, and clothes folded exactly how he liked them. These small details weren't just about organization. They were about creating a sense of normalcy for a child who would never experience a typical childhood. The Spanish nanny brought more than just structure to George's life. She introduced him to her language and culture, teaching him words like gracias and buenos dias that became their private code. When George struggled with emotions that most children his age couldn't articulate, Maria was there with gentle guidance. She taught him to identify whether he was frustrated or just tired, giving him emotional vocabulary that would serve him throughout his life. As George grew older, Maria adapted her role accordingly. She transitioned from making all his decisions to offering choices, from guiding him into rooms to walking beside him. She watched him develop his own preferences, his own personality, and his own understanding of his unique position in the world. When he asked difficult questions about why strangers waved at his car, or why his room was different from other children's, Maria provided honest, age-appropriate answers that helped him understand his reality without overwhelming him. The bond between Maria and George was evident to anyone who observed them together. Palace staff noted how George would instinctively look for her when upset, how his face would light up when she entered a room, and how he trusted her completely. She wasn't his parent, but she was his constant companion, his source of comfort, and his guide through the complexities of royal childhood. But by the time George turned 7, the dynamics within the Cambridge household began shifting. The palace was focusing more intensely on preparing George for his future role as king. More advisors, more formal education, more structured protocols. The warm, nurturing environment Maria had created was being replaced by something more institutional and rigorous. The decision to dismiss Maria wasn't made lightly or suddenly. Palace sources suggest it was part of a broader restructuring of George's education and preparation for royal duties. As he entered a new phase of his development, the family felt he needed different types of guidance. More academic tutors, protocol specialists, and advisors who could prepare him for the increasing public responsibilities that lay ahead. The meeting where Maria was informed of her dismissal was handled with the diplomatic courtesy typical of royal communications. Prince William and Catherine personally thanked her for her years of service, acknowledging the crucial role she had played in George's development. They emphasized that the decision wasn't about her performance, but about George's evolving needs as he matured and his royal duties expanded. The conversation with George about Maria's departure was undoubtedly difficult. Palace insiders suggest that George struggled with the change more than his parents anticipated. The boy who had known Maria as a constant presence throughout his formative years suddenly faced the reality of her absence. The transition represented more than just a staffing change. It marked the end of his childhood as he had known it. Maria's departure from Kensington Palace was characteristically quiet and dignified. She packed only personal items that held special meaning. Book they had read together, drawings George had made for her, and a notebook filled with memories and observations she had kept private throughout her tenure. There were no dramatic scenes, no public statements, just a professional conclusion to a deeply personal relationship. The immediate aftermath of Maria's departure revealed the depth of her influence on George's daily life. New staff members struggled to replicate the seamless routines she had established. George's eating habits changed, his sleep patterns were disrupted, and his behavior showed signs of the emotional adjustment he was experiencing. The boy who had been known for his sunny disposition seemed quieter, more reserved. What the royal family hadn't anticipated was Maria's response to her dismissal. While she maintained her professional discretion publicly, privately, she began documenting her experiences and observations from her years at Kensington Palace. Her detailed records included everything from George's developmental milestones to conversations with senior royals about child-rearing philosophies and palace politics. Maria's decision to break her silence wasn't motivated by revenge or financial gain. Instead, she felt compelled to share her perspective on royal child-rearing and the pressures placed on young members of the royal family. Her insights offered an unprecedented glimpse into the private world of raising a future king, revealing both the privileges and the burdens that come with royal birth. The revelations from Maria's time at Kensington Palace have exposed tensions within the royal family about how best to prepare George for his future role. Some family members advocated for a more traditional, formal approach to his education, while others, including his parents, preferred to maintain as much normalcy in his childhood as possible. Maria found herself caught in the middle of these competing philosophies. Her account details moments of friction between different generations of royals about George's upbringing. Senior royals occasionally questioned whether George was being adequately prepared for his responsibilities, while William and Catherine defended their desire to give him a relatively normal childhood. Maria observed these tensions firsthand and documented how they affected the household dynamics. The timing of Maria's revelations coincides with increasing scrutiny of how the royal family manages the transition between generations. With King Charles establishing his reign and William preparing for his eventual succession, questions about George's preparation for kingship have become more pressing. Maria's insider perspective adds a human dimension to these discussions that the public rarely sees. Palace officials are reportedly concerned about the precedent Maria's disclosures might set for other former staff members. The royal household depends on the discretion and loyalty of its employees, and any breach of that trust threatens the privacy that the family requires to function. Maria's decision to speak out, regardless of her motivations, challenges the traditional code of silence that has protected royal privacy for generations. The impact on George himself remains the most concerning aspect of this situation. The boy who once had Maria as his constant source of stability now faces not only her absence, but also the public discussion of his private life. The protective bubble that his parents worked so hard to maintain around his childhood has been compromised in ways they never anticipated. As this story continues to unfold, the royal family faces difficult questions about how to balance transparency with privacy, tradition with modernity, and preparation for duty with the preservation of childhood. Maria's quiet rebellion has forced a conversation about royal child-rearing that the palace would have preferred to keep private. The woman who spent 9 years in the shadows has stepped into the light, and the reverberations of her decision will likely be felt for years to come.